Most of what you call weakness isn't real. It isn't some curse you were born with, and it isn't a permanent flaw stitched into your personality. Weakness is an illusion, something trained into you, something you've repeated to yourself so many times that it began to feel like truth. You've been taught to believe you're fragile, but that fragility was never you. It was planted, reinforced, disguised as humility, disguised as kindness, disguised as patience. Think about it. Every time you swallowed your anger just to keep the peace. Every time you pretended not to care so you wouldn't be judged. Every time you shrank your presence to make someone else comfortable. You weren't being weak. You were being conditioned. Trained to obey. Trained to conform. Trained to silence the voice inside you that knew better. Look at the world around you. It's built to keep you distracted, passive, endlessly scrolling. Motivational speeches echo across your feed, promising change, promising growth. But once the screen goes black, nothing is different. Because deep down, you know inspiration is cheap. Comfort is cheap. And comfort has only one purpose: to keep you from confronting the truth. The truth is that weakness isn't natural. It's manufactured. It's the slow erosion of your willpower. It's society rewarding you for obedience. It's the people around you praising your silence because your silence makes you easier to control. And the longer you accept that illusion, the further you drift from who you really are. So understand this clearly. This is not a video meant to motivate you. I will not tell you what you want to hear. I will not dress weakness up as virtue. I will not give you comfort. Instead, I will confront you. I will peel back the layers of lies that you've mistaken for your personality. And when they re-gone, when the mask is stripped away, what is left won't be a better version of you. It will be the version that has always been there, buried, waiting for you to finally stop protecting your weakness. And that is where we begin. So let's begin with a question. What does it really mean to be weak? Most people think weakness is obvious. They think it's crying too much. They think it's being physically small. They think it's lacking discipline or willpower. But Nietzsche would disagree. He would tell you that weakness isn't found in tears, or in body type, or in the natural struggles of life. No, weakness is far more subtle, far more corrosive, far more dangerous. Weakness is emotional submission. It's when you feel something deeply but refuse to stand by it. Weakness is needing permission before you act, outsourcing your worth to the approval of people who don't even understand themselves. Weakness is choosing peace over truth. Weakness is lying about what you want just to avoid judgment. And here's the most brutal part. Weakness often disguises itself as virtue. You call your laziness self-care. You call your fear humility. You call your insecurity empathy. You've been taught to believe your passivity makes you a good person, when in reality, it makes you invisible. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many times have you betrayed what you really wanted because it was easier to be quiet, easier to smile, easier to nod along? That's not kindness. That's not patience. That's self-betrayal. And self-betrayal, repeated enough times, doesn't just weaken you, it erases you. Because weakness is not the absence of strength. Weakness is the presence of surrender. It's the constant silencing of your instincts. It's the habit of denying your deeper truth in exchange for the safety of blending in. And here is the reality you must face. The world around you is built to feed that weakness. Education trained you to obey. Culture trained you to conform. Media trains you to feel helpless, mistaking awareness for action. Even the people who claim to love you, many of them benefit from your weakness. They encourage it. They reward it. They applaud your restraint, not because it's good for you, but because it keeps you small. Small, predictable, dependent, and, worst of all, forgettable. That is the illusion of weakness. It is not natural. It is not who you are. It is a system, a narrative, that has been imposed on you until you mistook it for your identity. And until you decide to see through it, until you decide to stop calling weakness by the names of goodness, you will never know what real strength feels like. The truth is this: the modern world is designed to make you weak, not by accident, but by structure. Every system you were born into was crafted to shape you into something predictable, manageable, and obedient. Your education did not train you to think, it trained you to obey. You were rewarded not for questioning, but for repeating. You were praised for memorizing the right answers, not for daring to ask new questions. Slowly, without realizing it, you learned that safety comes from silence, and recognition comes from compliance. Your culture did the same. It taught you to conform, to dress like everyone else, to believe what everyone else believes, to fear rejection more than you fear regret. It trained you to value belonging over individuality, to trade authenticity for acceptance. And each time you chose to shrink, to hide, to follow the script, you handed over another piece of your strength. Then came the media, screens that feed you helplessness disguised as awareness. News that convinces you the world is collapsing while you sit powerless. Stories designed not to make you act, but to make you consume, to keep you anxious enough to pay attention but passive enough to never resist. Every headline, every algorithm, every manufactured outrage chips away at your willpower until you no longer feel like a participant in your own life, but a spectator. And what about the people closest to you? Even many of them, without knowing it, benefit from your weakness. They encourage your softness because it makes them comfortable. They reward your selflessness because it keeps you available. They applaud your restraint, not because it's noble, but because it makes you easier to control. They don't want you strong, they want you small. Nietzsche saw this with piercing clarity. He warned that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And that struggle is not physical, it is psychological. The struggle to hold on to your instincts in a world that demands you neuter them. The struggle to remain dangerous, not violent, not chaotic, but dangerous, in a society that demands you be polite, polished, and obedient. And so here you are, shaped by systems that benefit from your submission, praised for behaviors that keep you invisible. But strength begins the moment you see through it. The moment you recognize that the world around you was built to domesticate you. And the question is simple. Will you remain a domesticated version of yourself, or will you begin the fight to reclaim what was buried? If weakness is an illusion trained into you, then what is real strength? Most people confuse strength with aggression. They think it's about being louder, harsher, more dominant than everyone else. But that's not strength. That's insecurity disguised as power. Real strength isn't found in the desperate need to control others. Real strength begins with the rejection of control over yourself. Nietzsche would tell you that true strength comes from independence, from refusing the addiction to mass thinking, from rejecting the hunger to be liked, to be validated, to be accepted. Real strength is the courage to stand apart, even when the entire world demands that you blend in. Ask yourself, who are you without the need to be liked? Not hypothetically, not in theory. Who are you when you strip away the filters, the polite smiles, the apologetic words you use to smooth over conflict? Who are you when you stop performing? When you stop shaping yourself into the version others find most convenient? Most people can't answer that question because they don't have a self. They have a mask sculpted by years of feedback, of approval, of criticism, a persona built not to live, but to survive. And Nietzsche despised this. He saw it as the death of the human spirit, the slow suffocation of the soul. Because the moment you start editing your truth to fit a system, the moment you trade authenticity for safety, you have already surrendered your power. And you can feel this surrender in your own life, can't you? That quiet resentment that lingers after every conversation where you held back what you really wanted to say. That simmering frustration when you lower your standards just to keep the peace. That fatigue that no amount of sleep ever fixes. That is not burnout. That is the cost of weakness. The cost of living in a way that silences your instincts, just to keep the surface smooth. So let us be clear. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not born to bow to every raised eyebrow. You were not born to tolerate everything. You were born to embody something sharper, something primal, not reckless, not chaotic, but unshakable, untouchable. Strength is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world convinced you to hide. If strength is buried beneath illusion, then where does weakness actually live? It hides in your habits, in the small, invisible routines that rot your willpower day after day while convincing you that everything is fine. Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." And that's exactly how weakness takes root. When you surrender control of your days, your words, and your body without even realizing it. Think about how you start your mornings. You wake up, and before you even breathe deeply, before you've set an intention, you reach for your phone. You scroll, you compare, you envy, you react. And in that single moment, you've already surrendered. Not because phones are evil, but because you didn't claim the day, you gave it away. You placed your mind, your mood, and your energy in the hands of an algorithm before you even stood up. It doesn't stop there. Weakness creeps into your speech. How many times have you watered down your words to keep others comfortable? How many times have you said, "I don't know," when you did? How many times have you apologized for things that didn't require an apology, for taking up space, for asking a question, for simply existing? Every time you do this, you leak power, and others can feel it. That's why they talk over you. That's why they dismiss you. That's why they underestimate you. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you surrendered clarity. And then there is the body. Weakness is written in your posture, in the way your shoulders slump, in the way your eyes avoid, in the way your breath stays shallow. Most people live like prey, small, closed, hidden. They forget that presence is not about aggression, but about alignment. You can read someone's story in how they sit, how they walk, how they carry themselves. And the story most people tell is one of submission. But here's the truth. These habits are not neutral. They are training you to be smaller, training you to bend, training you to accept a version of yourself that is forgettable. And unless you tear those habits out at the root, weakness will remain your default setting. So start with the little things. Own your mornings before you touch a screen. Own your words before you soften them into emptiness. Own your body before you let it betray your spirit. Every moment is a choice. You either obey yourself or you prepare to be commanded. Most people believe strength means feeling nothing, building walls so high that nothing gets in. But Nietzsche never praised numbness. He didn't call the absence of emotion strength. He called that dysfunction. Real strength is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional command. The ability to feel everything without being ruled by anything. The difference between reacting and responding. When someone disrespects you, weakness is exploding in anger, losing yourself in chaos, begging to be taken seriously. Weakness is chasing validation through rage. But strength? Strength is silence. Strength is the unshaken stare, the pause that makes the room tense, the patience to wait until your move is precise, calculated, surgical. Weakness is emotion without awareness. Strength is emotion under control, not suppression, but direction. A river flowing where you decide, not flooding wherever gravity demands. Think about it. How many times have you excused your lack of discipline by saying, "I'm just an emotional person"? That's not truth. That's an excuse. What you call emotion is often just lack of training, lack of control, lack of self-mastery. And Nietzsche's challenge is simple. Stop hiding behind your feelings as if they define you. They don't. You define them. Because strength doesn't come from shutting your heart off. It comes from refining it into a weapon. From crying when it has meaning, not when it has control. From channeling your passion into creation instead of destruction. From carrying pain without wearing it like a badge. Discipline is not cold. It is clean. It is precise. It is the difference between being a victim of your emotions and being the commander of them. And once you understand this, once you learn that strength is not about feeling less, but about choosing more, you will no longer fear emotion. You will master it. If there was one thing Nietzsche despised above almost anything else, it was victimhood. Not pain, not suffering. He respected those. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is part of life. But victimhood? Victimhood is a choice. It is the decision to chain yourself to your wounds and call the chains your identity. He believed that victimhood was the modern form of slavery. Not physical slavery, but psychological slavery. A state where people become addicted to their own weakness, loyal to their own scars. Where trauma becomes a story repeated so often it transforms into an excuse. Where pain is weaponized, not to grow stronger, but to demand sympathy. And here is the brutal truth. The world doesn't care what happened to you. Not really. It doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care about your rehearsed tragedies. It cares about what you become despite them. If your past only left you bitter, fragile, and anxious, then you did not rise above it. You surrendered to it. But strength demands something different. It demands that you stop telling your story like a tragedy. That you stop clinging to your pain as if it's the most important thing about you. That you stop using your wounds as an anchor and start using them as fire. Because every scar you carry can become armor if you refuse to wear it as a chain. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Your why is not given to you. It is not waiting out there for you to stumble upon it. Your why is chosen, carved into your life through decision, through commitment, through refusal to be defined by weakness. And once you choose it, once you decide what you serve, what you build, what you will no longer tolerate, then victimhood dissolves. Because the moment you live with purpose, pain transforms. It stops being a cage. It becomes a forge. And in that fire, weakness dies. One of the deepest roots of weakness is hidden in something almost everyone craves: belonging. From childhood, you were trained to seek it. School taught you to raise your hand for permission. Friends taught you to stay inside the tribe. Family taught you to suppress anything inconvenient. Relationships taught you to keep the peace, even when it cost you the truth. Over time, you weren't chasing love, you were chasing acceptance. But acceptance is not love. Acceptance is passive. It is conditional. It demands that you shrink, silence, and shapeshift into something more tolerable. It rewards you for being agreeable, for being soft-edged, for being non-threatening. And the more you practiced this, the more you became addicted to it. Addicted to belonging. Addicted to fitting in. Addicted to being invited, included, tolerated, even if it meant betraying yourself. Nietzsche would look you in the eye and tell you something that few can stomach. If you ever want to truly know yourself, you must be willing to stand alone. Completely, utterly, alone. Because belonging always comes with a price, and most people pay for it with their authenticity, their individuality, their strength. Ask yourself, how many times have you traded your truth just to stay inside the circle? How many times have you said yes when you meant no, smiled when you wanted to scream, stayed quiet when your instincts begged you to speak? Every one of those moments was not kindness, it was submission. And every act of submission makes you smaller. But not anymore. Your task is to unlearn this addiction. To stop begging for a seat at someone else's table and start building your own. To stop seeking tolerance and start demanding respect. And if no one joins you, good. More space, more clarity, more strength. Solitude over submission. That is your first upgrade. Because once you no longer need to belong to others, you finally begin to belong to yourself. Why do you procrastinate? Why do you delay the very things you know would make you stronger, sharper, better? Most people call it laziness, but Nietzsche would disagree. Procrastination is not laziness. It is loyalty. A hidden contract you made long ago to stay small so others would remain comfortable around you. Think back. Somewhere in your past, you learned that shining too brightly came with punishment. That ambition made people pull away. That honesty created distance. That power created loneliness. And so you adapted. You dimmed your fire. You delayed your momentum. You learned to sabotage yourself, not because you were weak, but because you were afraid of what your strength might cost you. But here is the brutal truth. That contract has already cost you more than you realize. Every hour wasted, every dream delayed, every promise broken to yourself. These are the payments you've made to protect other people's comfort. And if you continue, you will pay with your life. Nietzsche warned us. The snake which cannot cast its skin must die. That is what weakness really is, the refusal to evolve, the refusal to shed what no longer serves you, the refusal to risk loss in order to grow. You cling to your old skin, your people-pleasing, your overthinking, your endless apologies, and you call it safety. But it is not safety, it is decay. Now is the time to break the contract, to tear up the unspoken agreements that keep you small. Yes, you may lose people. Yes, you may feel the sting of separation, but strength demands it. Growth demands it. Life demands it. So shed the skin. Not gently, not slowly. Rip it off. The people pleaser, the self-doubter, the second-guesser, the version of you that kept the world comfortable while you suffocated. Let it die here, because until it does, your real life cannot begin. Now it's time to get tactical, because philosophy means nothing if it isn't lived. Strength isn't an idea, it's a practice. And weakness survives in the smallest details of your daily life. Start with your language. Every time you say, I don't know, when you do, you reinforce uncertainty. Every time you say, maybe, when you mean no, you fracture your integrity. Every time you apologize for existing, for interrupting, for needing anything, you cut away at your own spine. Weakness lives in those words. It leaks out in hesitation, in softness, in false humility. So stop softening. Stop qualifying. Speak your truth clearly, without dressing it in apologies. People will call you rude, but that's just the reflex of those who preferred you small. Let them choke on your clarity. Next, your body. Weakness hides in posture, in the way you slump your shoulders, in the way your eyes dart downward, in the shallow breaths of someone living like prey. But strength is carried physically, whether you realize it or not. Stand like someone who is watched. Walk like someone who expects to be followed. Sit like someone who doesn't need permission to take up space. You don't dominate rooms with force, you dominate them with presence. And presence comes from alignment, from knowing what you stand for so deeply that your very frame communicates certainty. So ask yourself, what do I believe in so strongly that I would walk away from anything that doesn't honor it? Write it down. Carry it with you. Let it bleed into every word you speak, every choice you make, every step you take. This is tactical transformation, not theory, not philosophy. Action, language, posture, values. These are the foundations of strength. And if you practice them consistently, you won't have to announce your power. People will feel it the moment you enter the room. And now we arrive at the end. Yet really, this is only the beginning. Because everything you've heard up until now wasn't about adding something new to you. It was about stripping away what was never yours to begin with. The illusion of weakness, the habits of submission, the addiction to belonging, the contract with smallness. All of it lies. You are not broken. You never were. The real you was buried, suffocated under layers of doubt, of fear, of obedience. And every word you've heard in this video was not building a new self. It was excavating the one that has been waiting for years to be unleashed. But here is the catch. You cannot unknow this. You cannot return to who you were before you heard these words. That old version of you, the one who delayed, who excused, who betrayed himself for comfort, he is dead the moment you admit he was an illusion. And from this moment forward, you only have two choices: evolve or lie. Evolve into the man who lives with clarity, who speaks with presence, who stands with strength, or lie to yourself, pretending you didn't know better, pretending you can still survive by being small. Nietzsche didn't respect comfort. He didn't respect the agreeable, the endlessly fragile, the ones who bent until they disappeared. He respected the real, the unshakable, the human being who could look in the mirror and see no hesitation, only presence. So decide now who you are. Decide what you protect. Decide what you will no longer tolerate for even one more day. Write it, live it, guard it as if your life depends on it, because it does. This is not motivation. This is not inspiration. This is a return to the strength that was always yours. A return to the clarity that was buried beneath weakness. A return to the self that doesn't need permission, approval, or applause. You are back, untouchable, unshakable, unleashed.